All right, welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm not sure how many participants or attendees are in the or watching live. If you are, feel free to interrupt me and shout out any questions or comments about what's going on to better understand kind of how we do things here at Alma College. I'm the defensive coordinator here. Just quickly about me, born and raised in Southwest Michigan at Menden High School, a small town, very much known for their football. And went from there to Central Michigan to play ball. Got injured, wasn't able to play football up there, and I got into a number of different roles in the coaching world and fell in love with this profession. And up there for 7 years, and from there went to Austin Peay State in Tennessee. Didn't win a whole lot of football games, but learned a heck of a lot. It was my first full-time job, and I had a really good experience down there, and really understanding again what my purpose and why was in this profession, and really enjoyed it. Came back to Michigan a couple years later and coached at LB in college for 2 years. Had a really good experience there, won a championship with that staff, and then came up to Alma College. I'm going on my 8th year now at Alma College as a defensive coordinator. I coach the linebackers as well, and been an unbelievable experience working with Coach Couch, our head coach here, and the other guys on this staff, and it's been again a great experience. We've won more games in the last couple of years than this school has, and it's school's history. We won a playoff game, which is the first time in school history. A couple championships, so it's been a lot of fun helping build a program and seeing where we've taken off from the beginning. So this clinic talk, we're going to talk about really the game planning and approach to game planning for us. There's not as much film with this kind of a clinic talk, and but I think a lot of information, and you can at least see or dive into a little bit of how we operate day to day, week to week as we prepare for our opponents. I know everyone's a little bit different. I'm a big believer. There's not one way of doing things. There's two ways of skinning the cat, and there's different ways of approaching game planning and creating call sheets and approaching each Saturday or Friday for the high school coaches out there. And again, just to dive into how we operate and kind of our thought processes are within each part of the game planning piece. The call sheet thing, again, I mentioned a little bit there, but the approach to creating a call sheet. When I started calling plays here on defense, it was very basic. Had your personnel groupings and your situational answers and calls, as well as field position answers and calls. And every year I've kind of built it into being more of what I'm looking for in a game. And I kind of talk through that process and how I create that. And then there's not a whole lot of QC, but there's a touch of it at the end. I'll just kind of give my thoughts on quality control, whether you're in season or out of season. So starting off on Sunday or Saturday for the high school coaches, we'll come in and we'll watch Saturday's film. And from this point, I think it's really important to be very critical of all the good and all the bad and things maybe that went on during the game on Saturday or Friday. So we'll analyze again all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, kind of put it in a list, and then dive deeper into those and analyzing those, starting with the scheme. With those, was there not enough reps in practice, and going through these questions and having answers for them? It's something we'll look back on, and week to week, sometimes we'll say, yeah, we definitely practiced what we played. We definitely practiced what we ended up calling. Sometimes it's too big of a game plan. We get a little bit too creative, or like during those bye weeks, there's certain times where you have that extra week and you start creating things that end up being too much for your players, and you see it on film with them not playing very fast. Formational adjustments. We're a semi-big formational adjustment team. There are certain times I think we have too many adjustments, too many formational adjustments, and that shows up again with missed assignments, missed alignments, bad communication. So looking through those things and being very critical of self, of not doing it again, and making sure that you're again, we told the line on having too much, but more importantly, for us to play high level defense, we need to be able to play fast and know what's going on. So looking at these things is very important, as well as even jumping into the technique changing or visual keys changing. So diving deeper into the schemes and the techniques within each play call, I think is something important to look at as well, to make sure that you're giving your players the ability to make plays. You're putting them in a spot to be successful. If certain positions and certain players can't handle certain techniques, tweak them and change them. And again, it goes back to not just doing things one way, and tweaking and changing things based on personnel and what the guys are comfortable with, that they can be productive in. Personnel jump again as far as who was in, who was productive, who wasn't. Where were the MAs coming from? Was it bad enough to where you needed to bump a starter back to a 2 or bump a 3 up to a 1 because he was that productive and he might be a quote unquote gamer, which I don't love those terms because it means they don't practice real well. But that happens certain times where the bright lights come on and you see a guy that maybe doesn't practice real well, make a bunch of plays. So looking at those things and having the ability and being open to moving guys around, not having enough rotation, or having rotational issues, particularly with the D line as they sub in and out to stay fresh. Looking at that, and then again, ask if you're asking guys to do something they can't. If you're a cover one man coverage team and that's just what you're brought up as a coach, and you believe in it and you love it and you know it can work, great. But do you have the personnel who can actually run man coverage? Are you getting beat deep a bunch? Can they not make the checks and adjustments based on motion and cluster sets or stack sets? Being realistic and making sure you're putting guys in the right spots to make plays. So things that we talk about every Sunday, and as far as me calling the plays, is being very critical as well. If the opponent you were preparing for ran maybe a certain type of scheme that you weren't prepared for, did yourself and the coaches fix that quick enough? If so, great. If not, why? Were the guys in the box, were they not able to see what the actual scheme was? Was it a certain type of counter or gap that they blocked differently? So again, what was the issue and why didn't it get fixed in the first quarter when you saw it? Why did it take 2 quarters to fix it? And making sure your game day processes are going simply, they're smooth, they're efficient with the conversations on the phones, as well as looking at other play call pieces. If you gave up on something too quickly, that it was productive. You had a pressure or blitz that got home, you created a sack, and maybe you didn't call it the rest of the game. Why not? And or if you ran things too many times and they weren't real productive, why didn't you change and get out of those calls early enough? Substitution issues, we talked about a little bit. Again, the communication piece on the sideline we mentioned. Those things are really important to make sure you're constantly looking at all operations within game planning, but more importantly, like on Saturdays or Friday nights, when it matters, are things efficient? Is the communication going well? Are you getting the information that you want and you need as a play caller? And if not, tweak it or change your process to make sure you're getting what you need. The right game plan. So again, looking with your staff at the game plan, did you have the right plan going in? I've been a part of a number of staffs where no matter what the result was, we said, yeah, it was a great game plan. And that's just not reality. Whether you win or you lose, I think it's important to be very critical of your game plan. Was it exactly what you needed? Did you have too much of this or too much of that? Did you plan on blitzing too much and you didn't end up blitzing, and why? So just being very critical of how you game planned your opponents and taking notes on that if you're going to see that same opponent the following year. Again, too complicated. It's something that, again, we're a very multiple defense with how we operate in our structures and our schemes. And, were we too complicated? Something that we talk about daily, something we come in here Thursday after practice and I'm constantly asking, do we have too much? Do we have too much? If we're still having MAs, 2 days before our game, we're not getting the checks, we're not communicating real well, we will absolutely start pulling things out of the game plan. Even the day before the game sometimes, to make sure, again, at the end of the day, no matter how much we want to do as coaches, if our guys aren't playing fast, if they're not confident in what they're doing, you're not going to be successful. Didn't change the looks enough potentially. Again, for us, it's important to change fronts and change structures and change coverages and change alignments. That's something we live off of. That's who we are as a defense. So if we didn't change enough, why not? Did we not prepare for enough structural changes in that department? So the last piece of this, again, is underestimating the personnel and another plan to counteract. And I'll dive deeper into this as this talk goes. But having a contingency plan for certain personnels or certain plays, certain schemes is something that's really important. There's been a number of times we've went into a game and like, hey, we need to stop the quarterback. We need to stop this certain receiver. We stop those 2 guys, and if we lose to the other guys, we can live with it. And there's been certain times where another guy will start to play really well. Like he'll be their guy of the week. Maybe we underestimated how talented he was. So having something in your game plan, something in your play call toolbox that you can use to take care of that guy as well, or to not take care of the guy you thought you had to take care of. So again, all this goes back into putting your guys in great positions to make plays and be productive. Quality control, it's something that we don't do right away during the season. Obviously, you need to have some play calls and some buildup of your plans and film in order to create tendencies for the coordinators that are going to watch you. But this is important stuff, and I think our eyes lie to us a lot of times. We think maybe we didn't call a certain pressure, or certain coverage as much as we thought. So maybe the guys that are preparing for us won't think that's going to be coming. In reality, when you run reports, when you run quality control stuff, a lot of times it's an eye-opening experience for me. Okay, we've ran this a lot. or all their empty checks we've ran. This is just one adjustment or just these two adjustments, so they can prepare that empty check and they know where to attack those weaknesses of those defenses. 3x1 checks, maybe we called a bunch of different 3x1 checks, but the time they ran 3x1, we had the same check called. So they're actually seeing the same 3x1 check, and just understanding again where our tendencies are, whether it's efficiencies and needing to run things more because they're productive, or things that the offense is actually watching us do and what they are preparing for, so we can counteract what we're going to do and what we need to prepare for. Uh, Personnel tendencies, the good and bad stuff. It is another part of it. If we're having an issue with 10 personnel and we're in our 4-down or package defensively, we need to run more 3-down potential. Let's get another cover guy in the field. Let's be a little more +1 in the pass game. Vice versa, if they're getting their heavier sets of 21 and 12 personnel, maybe we need to get another guy in the box. Why aren't we productive versus personnel A, B, or C? Important things to look at. Third down being the money down. Obviously, the most important down in football, as far as forcing that fourth down in the punt. What's the efficiency? There's been certain times we've been really bad here, and certain times we've been really, really good. And understanding when you are really good of keeping that and still making subtle adjustments, as well as when you're really bad, of figuring out why and being willing and open to overhaul that change of how you operate in third down or red zone or short yardage, things of that nature. Just an example of a report we run as we get into week 2, week 3, and so on throughout the season. It shows our efficiencies. Again, reports I'm sure all you guys run as well, but actually seeing it visually. And again, every time I do this, whether it's with coverages or pressures or line movements in this case, or fronts, it's always a little bit eye-opening. Hey, I didn't realize this coverage was so productive. I didn't realize this pressure got home almost every single time. We need to put this back into the game plan. We need to pull this back into our thoughts and the next week's preparation. So running reports within field position reports, down and distance reports, as well as your own game planning calls, I think is important to kind of get an overview of where you need to fix things, where your strengths, where your weaknesses are, things you maybe need to call more or call less of. Those things come in on Sundays as you look through the quality control reports. Moving forward now, so as we look at the previous game and you go through all the whole checklist I just went through, and now it's moving forward to the next game. So breaking down, we dabble. It's typically 4 games, the 4 most recent games, but we'll always have a thought process of, again, we base out of a 4-down, but we run, a heck of a lot of 3-down too. So when we're watching our opponent and who they are playing, we try to, we definitely think about who are they playing that has similar type of defenses and fronts and structures. As we all know, offensive coordinators, when they prepare, they look at the same thing. If we're running a certain coverage or a certain pressure for certain formations, they'll pull the same thing and prepare what they think that they're going to get as well. So we try to find the opponent's opponent and try to get the 4-down games and look through those. And the 3-down, what is their 4-down plan? What is their 3-down plan? What is their zone plan? What is their man plan? How do they handle pressure? So having that huge playlist of broken down plays typically is the most 4 recent games, but we'll also jump further back into the season as the season goes on to get similar type defenses to understand how they attack that same defense. The 2D piece, again, we go over obviously in the statistics and who their top guys are. It's one thing that we start off in game planning. Who do we need to stop? I mentioned it a minute ago, but if we stop, their top 1, 2, and 3 players, that is the plan. That is our game plan. How do we do that? They're a huge run team. What is the run plan? And we start there as far as our preparation piece goes. As far as coordinators, if it's someone that you've faced before, did you have a bunch of success? Are they going to change a bunch? Are who they are no matter what year it is and what game it is? So just understanding kind of how they call plays, I think, is also an important piece. Having notes on each coordinator that you play is also important, because I think, after you play those coordinators, you can forget a lot of things. So I'm writing those notes down every Sunday and then pulling them back out year to year to see the similarities and differences that they have week to week is also an important piece too.